Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fourth session of our eight-session fourth annual New Jersey Environmental Health Summit. The title of this session is Stewards of Our Sacred Earth, Faith Leaders Advancing Environmental Health. The mission of the Community Engagement Corps of the Center for Environmental Exposure and Disease, which includes Kerry Butch and myself, as the directors, is to primarily communicate with people affected by our work about what's important to them, and in turn to let them know about the work that we're doing that may be relevant to their lives. This bidirectional communication includes our work with public health and medical professionals, educators, policymakers, and last but not least, certainly local communities. Much of the work that we do with local communities is in partnership with community organizations, non-governmental organizations whose focus is on advocating for environmental health. So obviously these are our natural partners, and we have clearly aligned goals. We have felt the need, however, to reach out a little bit more to other communities that are not so clearly defined by their environmentalism, such as various faith communities. Many people may see a tension between science and religion. Some may even see hostility. Much of this may be based on assumptions and miscommunications. So a main theme of today's session is to explore ways that the scientific and environmental health communities can work together around common goals and values. So with that, I'd like to ask Kerry to introduce our panelists for today and get us started with the session. Thank you, Kerry.
Well, again, welcome everybody, and thank you, Rob, for that. I want to thank everybody who's attending for coming. This year's conference, as Rob said, is focusing on maternal and child health and justice, and continues to be designed and implemented in partnership between CEED researchers and the members of our stakeholder advisory board. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the conference coordinating team, our director Helmut Zarbel, and the fantastic, ever there for us, Maria Crescenzio, that as always generously gives her time and expertise to each and every session. All of the sessions that are being hosted on our website, all of the sessions are being hosted on our website so that you'll never have to miss a session. So as Rob mentioned, today's session is entitled Stewards of Our Sacred Earth, Faith Leaders Advancing Environmental Health. As you already know, water testing, air monitoring, and truck counting are not usually associated with the traditional spirituality or religion, but most communities of faith feel like they've been entrusted by their creator with caring for the environment. This session highlights how two local faith-based institutions can and do address environmental health issues in their EJ communities. So today we're going to talk about how faith leaders, researchers, and public health professionals can work together toward these goals. I'm very, very happy to introduce both Father Miguel Hernandez and Walt Leek. Father Miguel is the priest in charge at the Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in West Orange, New Jersey. And he's been working with us, I think, for at least 3 or 4 years now. Walt Leek, he is a trustee at Mount Calvary United Church of Deliverance, New Life Family Center in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And he also has been working with us, I think, for about 3 years. And so we want to also welcome and acknowledge their partners in research and our partners in research. EOC's Executive Director, Brian Buckley, and our Community Engagement Coordinator, Core Director, Rob Lumbach. So as partners, we want them to feel free to share their thoughts also. But first, let's welcome Father Miguel. Father Miguel, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. As faith leaders, we must be concerned about social justice, environmental justice, and anything that has to do with the needs of vulnerable people in our communities. I will be sharing with you a presentation on a project that was done here at West Orange in New Jersey concerning water quality. This project has to do with bringing awareness into our community with regard to lead poisoning in water. And that's the issue that we address in this project. It was conducted in 2016-17 and concluded in 2018 with many presentations around town and on YouTube and different other venues. You know, Scripture took us from the very beginning in the book of Genesis about the creation of the earth and that the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So this gives us a good introduction to the topic of water. Water is very important for all living creatures. And the project was conducted at the church located at 315 in Main Street in West Orange, a church that had been here since 1907. To give you a perspective, the West Orange is very close to Newark in New York City as a point of reference. And one of the landmarks that we have around here is the Thomas Edison Museum. So we're very close, a few blocks from here. In terms of water, on the planet, there is around 3% of fresh water. The rest of the water is saline or part of the oceans. So therefore, as people who are concerned about water, you know, having only 3% is of the water that is good for drinking is should be a great concern for us, and we should take care of the water. Now, where is that the pollution comes from? You know, there are many sources for the pollution: cosmetics, medicine, agriculture, farming, anything that, you know, is processed in industrial places introduces pollutants that they go either in the air and eventually, you know, they come down in the form of rain, or go directly into the soil, into the water, into our communities. So that's where the pollution of the water comes in. Now, once these pollutants, you know, goes into the soil or the water, and it comes down as rain, snow, or anything, and it ends up in rivers, lakes, and, you know, that water is used for drinking, for consumption, and even though it goes through some treatments, you know, some of that pollutants even gets to us in the water. So this is like external things that are happening to the water. So there are many sources. And then, of course, emerging products that bring new difficulties for scientists to keep track of, you know, new components in air or the water that needs to be tracked, that needs to be tested. And so it creates a level of complexity for analyzing and testing the new pollutants that are emergent. So we had a concern about water contamination at the church in West Orange. We were listening that there were problems in other areas, and we wanted to see whether we, you know, were in trouble at the church. We have a lot of children who comes to the church, you know, and we drink the water there. So there was a main concern for that. And also, as part of some preliminary research, I did uncover that, you know, at one point they used to use wells to supply water to West Orange and other towns in the vicinity. And the study would show that, you know, that water contained pollutants that produce cancer. And so, you know, I validated the concern that I have for the water in our community. So we have a tetrachloroethylene and trichloroethylene in the water. So, those are some of the components that they were reported. And so that raised really a flag for me. Other reasons, the city of Flint in Michigan and very close to us in Newark, they also experience high levels of lead. And as we know, lead is detrimental to the health of children and pregnant women. And so, that's another valid reason why we decided to do this project. And the good news is that at least in terms of the wells that were used here in West Orange, they're no longer in use. So no longer have to worry about those wells, bringing pollutants to the water in the township of West Orange. Currently, the New Jersey American Water supplies the water to the town. This is a private company. It provides water to various communities in New Jersey. And the question was, what are we going to do in case that we have pollutants in the water? What can we do? And the solution that we came up with was to create an awareness campaign. The main issue was to talk about the quality of water and inform people in our community about the quality of the water. Maybe they don't know what that is. Maybe they don't know that there is a report that is produced by the company to access it, to read it, and that was basically the project to some extent. So in terms of the awareness campaign, we contacted local politicians. Like for example, the city hall here in West Orange was very helpful. They opened so many doors. We also engaged Green Faith. We partnered with Rutgers University, and we organized the community at the church. We created presentations on YouTube. We delivered some sermons concerning water, and there were interviews on community radios in Newark. Now, part of the implementation that we did is we invited people to come to our church, and we developed 2 presentations. We did a bilingual presentation. In other words, we have two presentations, one Spanish solely and one in English, because our community, here in West Orange is made of a lot of people who speak Spanish. So we wanted to engage them as well. And so we created some presentations that included reports from different sources, like videos from PBS and other places that show that the pollution of the water, especially in the case of lead, was something that we needed to know. So we demonstrated some of that. We presented some speakers from different universities, like in Mexico, UNAM in Mexico, in Spanish, dealing with water as well, and also in English for the English-speaking group. And we showed them how to access the water report, how to read it, how to interpret it, and to be concerned about some of those details. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So we deliver sermons and also develop questionnaires. We wanted to find out how much people knew about water quality in general. So partnership, as I said before, we partnered with Rutgers University, the West Orange Hispanic Foundation, Green Faith, the Township of West Orange, and of course, our local community at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church. At one point, a group of students and the director at the time of the Environmental Health Department at Rutgers came to the church, collect the samples, various samples from different faucets that we have at the church. They label everything, they created logs, and then they took those samples to the university to be tested. At the same time, I hired a company to run a different set of tests so that I can compare the results, right? So that I can see whether we are in compliance, let's say. You know, the numbers don't contradict each other. So we decided to have another test independently so that we can do a comparison of the data results. And at one point we were invited to Rutgers for a readout of the results of the water in terms of lead. And we were happy to hear that the results were acceptable. And, you know, in our church, we bring a lot of kids to learn about the environment, to be concerned about the environment, because we have to start to educate everyone early on about nature, about the environment, how to take care of it, and also to see whether they would be interested in becoming a scientist, to be able to develop their own set of skills or career paths. So it's a multi-faceted program that we have here. And by the way, we have this guidance science program since 2014. So we've been working at it for a while, and we continue to do so. Now, the presentation that I'm showing to you was part of my dissertation and presentations at the New York Theological Seminary for a doctoral degree in ministry, which I'm happy to report that I completed in 2018. And as one thing leads to another, now I'm teaching a class at the New York Theological Seminary as to how to make proposals. So I'm teaching students how to prepare proposals for projects and implementations of the projects. Now, this is part of the presentation that I show during my workshops. You know, I collected all the information from the New Jersey American Water, and I use zip codes so that you can get to the town that you are looking for, right? So they give you an area that you can do a search for zip code, and then you have to look for the town. It turns out that the town of West Orange is not listed. You have to pick Short Hills in order to download the report that includes various towns, including West Orange. This is something that was new to me, and it was a good information for the people who listen to the talk. So the point here is that if you are trying to get something like the report, sometimes the data is there, but it's very difficult to find it. So that was part of the project here. And then we showed them the different elements or components that are in the water, some pathogens, nutrients, pesticides, and different things that are in the water. So we just showed them that as a way of showing them that there is a lot of things in the water. There are a lot of components that we need to be aware of, and we showed them some of these components, even though my main concern for the presentation was lead in the water, but I wanted to give them an overview about the issues with the components in the water. And so there are so many things that are contained in water. Like I'll give you some example here. We had fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, and so many other components, right? And then also we have heavy metals like lead, copper, and like I said earlier, my main concern was lead. And so I showed them this presentation, and I also mentioned to them that there is this action level of 15, that, you know, the units is part per billion, right? And the amount that they found is like a percentile of 3, and they say that it's in compliance, right? And so part of the educational component here for the audience was to show them that, like, you know, we have a 15 part per billion. It's a concern according to this chart. However, there are other scientific communities that are saying that, you know, even 15 part per million is too much. It should be 0. Now, the pipes in the United States, you know, most of them are made of lead steel. So the water is going to be contaminated to some degree. So the issue of achieving a 0 part per billion requires that, you know, all the pipes probably in the United States should be removed, right? And that will require a long time and a lot of investment. There are other parameters that also were shown, you know, other components of the water. Then this was basically for information to them, you know, to make them aware that water is a very complex liquid. And, you know, there are more numbers here in terms of lead, action level 15 part per billion. And one of the situations that I tried to show the audience during the presentation was that we can do something about lead in our house, for example. So I found this link where if you put your address and your information in the community, right, you can find out, you know, if your home was built with lead pipes, right? So you put your county, you know, the town, and then you enter the address, you submit that search, and then you're given the report, right? If your home is, you know, has the problem of lead, it will be indicated here. And, you know, as a rule of thumb, we can say that if the house was built before 1920, then there is a great possibility that the pipes contain lead. And then if there is lead in your house, then you have to do something about that, right? You need to test the water. Now, testing is something that you cannot do once in a lifetime. You have to do it periodically. That's why companies have to do like an annual testing of the water, the quality. Maybe it should be more often, right? Maybe it should be every month, because the quality of the water keeps changing over time. So just because you run the test one time and it looks good, you know, it's within compliance, it doesn't mean that it's good for all times. So therefore, testing is something that must be on an ongoing basis. Now, if the lead contamination is greater than 15 parts per billion, yeah, then, you know, the recommendation is for women and children to be tested for lead poisoning. At our church, there were times that, you know, people came to test kids in the community for lead poisoning. So that's part of the ongoing participation that we have in our community. We always educating, but we're also getting involved in making sure that people get the right treatment, or, you know, consultation, or whatever they need to be well. And that's our purpose here, to educate them so that they can be proactive about their own health and also the health of the community. Now, one of the recommendations that we give during the talk is that, you know, if you, for example, use running water at home for cooking, for drinking, is that before you use it, you let it run for a minute or two. Let the water run, let all that lead be flushed out. Or you can implement some kinds of filters, right? There are inexpensive filters that you can use that will take most of the contaminants out, and therefore your drinking will be safe, right? The water will be safe to drink. Now, methodologies. You know, part of the methodology that we used was educating, right? So we presented this material at our church to our local community. We invited people to the Hispanic Foundation. We came to the town of West Orange during one of their meetings. We also talked about the issue at the public library in West Orange. And like I said, community radios like in Newark interviewed me a few times, and they created some also videos of the presentations that we did. So we really were involved in the community. You know, we identified the stakeholders, and people were very, very interested in finding about these issues. And during the questionnaires, what we found was that, you know, even if people were educated, because we asked some of those questions, what's your level of education, you know? And they were saying that they did not know anything about the water quality. And then when I asked them in some of the questions, you know, are you concerned about lead? some of them did not know how to answer, and, and so it is important to ask questions, and those questions, once people report the questionnaire, they themselves start to ask, what's in the water, right? And then they get more involved and they start to read their own reports. In closing remarks, water is needed for all living creatures, right? We must protect the water. Water is vital, without water, life is probably not going to exist the way we know it, right? Farmers need waters, plants need waters, animals need waters, human beings need water. So we all need water. We need to be concerned about the water. And that's my talk about all the time, be concerned about the water, because if we don't do anything about the water now, there will be a time that it's going to be too late, right? The water will be so contaminated that we won't be able to cope with human consumption or any living creature. So that's the presentation, and my last call is for all of us to be involved in our communities, and let's save creation. We're part of the creation. We are part of this beautiful planet that we have. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Father Miguel. It looks like we have a question for you. The question is, can we have access to your presentation? Would you be willing to share your slides with people?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, excellent. Well, when Maria posts the session on the website, she'll also post Father Miguel's slides. So I also want to take this opportunity to let you guys know to ask a question or make a comment in the chat, and I'll be checking that every once in a while. It gives me great pleasure to introduce again Trustee Walt Leek from Elizabeth, New Jersey. Walt, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to this conference. I'm going to start at the beginning, how we got here. I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on a video that we have, and after that, I believe we have some slides. Dr. Lambach is going to elaborate on those. So right now, I guess you guys can see the background. I'm in an 18-wheeler right now, but I'm at a distribution center getting loaded. So I'm not driving, guys. I'm sitting still. So I'd say it took me 5 years in order to get this truck band that you're going to be seeing in the video that we are going to show. Unbeknownst to me, Rutgers University had came to, they were invited down to our community by a brand new day. Back in 2013, they did a truck study and air study of the pollution. And so when we got this project going, once this project was completed, during the process of the project, Rutgers found out about it, and they came back and did another study. So when Rutgers came the first time, the community was in the process of being transformed. When they came back this time, our community is completely transformed. At one time, this used to be a very important industrial hub, right outside of the piers down in Elizabeth. So this is the main reason why we had this truck traffic coming through. Because you'll see in the slides that we're located between two interchanges, 13A and 13. So these guys were cutting through First Street just to save on the toll. If they're going south or if they're going north, in the pier or out of the pier, it was coming through First Street. I think the number was something like 50 trucks an hour. And that's like 5 days a week, and on the weekends it was almost just the same. So this is 7 days a week that this was going on. And so me being out here driving these rigs, I felt totally disrespected. Our community felt disrespected because I'm driving through these other communities. I got to go all around the world just to get to a warehouse that I could see. But you're not allowed to drive through these communities. So I felt like, you know, something had to be done. So I started gathering signatures. I got petitions, and little did I know once I got started, just how bad it really was talking to these families. You know, they're living, it was a nightmare. I mean, around all night. It was like 24 hours. People getting the mirrors knocked off, people almost getting killed by these trucks, running the stop signs. It was just, it was pandemonium. So I felt really driven that we had to get something done by this. The city of Elizabeth, as you'll see in the video, they tried to get it done, but they weren't allowed to get it done because it was it was under federal jurisdiction. So I finally got in touch with the right person down in Washington, and that's what got the ball rolling. So they called back up, they reached back out. I don't know how they did it. They reached back to Elizabeth and got in touch with the right people up here in Jersey, down in Trenton. Those people got in touch with people in Elizabeth, and then the ball got rolling. So it took 5 years to get it done, but we finally got it done, and I really feel good about it. This community, Mount Calvary has been servicing this community for 96 years. We just celebrated our 96th year anniversary last month. 70 of those years, somebody from my family has been the pastor. Being my grandfather started out, he was first. He actually built the building that we're in. Then my uncle took over. Then now my cousin is pastor. Now I have a son. When he retires, my son is in line being groomed to be pastor. So these are our people. These are our people here. We're concerned about our people here. We're concerned about their safety, and we're concerned about their health. We had no idea that the pollution was as bad as it was. I mean, when I started this project out, my whole thing was about safety. But then when I met Terry and I met Dr. Lambach, they showed me another whole side. We all saw another whole side. We never even realized, because asthma is like really an issue down in this area. So 99%, that's probably one of the main causes. So right now, what we're trying to do, we're trying to put together a format to educate the younger people. I mean, younger kids are more involved in climate change and these things, so their ears are more open. The older people, it's kind of hard to get them to hear what we got to say about climate change. But the younger people, they're more educated when it comes to that. So we're trying to put together a format now so we can try to educate some of these kids, bring some people in that can educate us more, so we can, you know, try to service our community about the consequences of bad air in our community. So I really feel proud of the fact that our church was able to make a difference in these people's lives, and hundreds of families are involved. As you'll see in the film, we got new schools, community center, water park, clinic, health clinic. It's just a totally transformed community. And so I'm just so happy that we were able to get this done. So with that being said, go ahead and watch the video, and it'll elaborate a lot more on what was done. Okay.
These trucks are cutting through here because First Street is between the exits 13 and 13A. They cut through here to save money for the toll. Can you imagine two tractor trailers meeting each other head on? You know, both cannot fit through there at the same time. I know this, I drive these rigs. I used to drive up and down First Street myself. You got cars parked on the side. People get their mirrors knocked off. We had a funeral one day, and the tractor trailer went right through the funeral and hit one of the bishop's cars and kept going.
We have a port, Newark, Port Elizabeth, which is a few miles north of us. Also a lot of warehouses in this area. This goes back to the year 2000. The federal government indicated to us that it was not allowed for us to cut out this truck route because it was a violation of the interstate commerce.
This is the truck route?
Yep.
I collect hundreds of signatures. I've been to the city council numerous amount of times. This community needs to know what's in our head. We want to know the truth. This area is big for asthma. Maybe this is one of the things that's causing it. The Rutgers scientists came, not only did they come once in 2013, they came back again this year to do another study, and it's been a godsend.
So this is the condensation particle counter. It measures the particles in the air. What we want to do with this device is just hold it steady.
As we're standing here right now, we don't see soot in the air. This is a black carbon monitor, a very sensitive instrument that can show us that there really are these very tiny particles in the air that we're all breathing right now, and that many of them come from diesel trucks. So we're just going to carry it down to the turnpike right now. People who are like local students who are going to be engaged like locally in like environmental health here. Around some of these issues like air quality, around issues like
I was out west one time, and the air out there was just so much different than it is here. And that makes me wonder if the people here will ever get to have, clean air that's just not contaminated by all this, diesel that we've been, looking for.
And these particles now, 120,000, are about 6 times higher than the 20,000 particles per cc that we saw when we started out on First Street. And the source of these particles in the air is those cars and trucks on the turnpike. 130,000 vehicles a day, 15,000 trucks a day on the turnpike.
I grew up on the northern side of Elizabeth by the Newark airport. We've been breathing that air for 17 years.
Is it just the asthma that it triggers, or is it cardiovascular health? Is it mental health? Is it stress?
Walter Lee contacted me, and what we found out is that the state felt that this was still a very industrial area. We outlined the fact that the area has changed. We have 3 new schools, senior citizen centers, and a water park, very residential. The truck ban, it's about public safety and cleaner air. And how can we make sure that we have a cleaner environment in this area of the city? We have just raised over here the Bayonne Bridge so that the big ships from Panama can start coming up, which is going to be more trucks and more industry in the area. What kind of environment are we going to have? Is there a cleaner way, cleaner fuels, cleaner trucks?
How you doing? Good to see you. So the main part of the business here is trucks?
I love trucks.
And I think what we all want to do is make sure there's a trucking operation here and make sure the port is serviced. But we also want to make the trucks cleaner and safer for the betterment of our communities.
Anything that helps the environment.
This neighborhood has been the same for the last 40 or 50 years. There's an awful lot of truck traffic going in and out of the port of the city of Elizabeth, the largest port on the East Coast, and dealing with an awful lot of truck traffic.
And it's per cc of air, so it's sugar cube size, amount of air.
And the reason it's going back and forth is it's adjusting?
Yeah, it's because it's taking a measurement every few seconds. But as trucks go by, you saw it went up from like 15 to 30,000.
Right. This is a hub of economic activity. Truck traffic is important to this region and important to an awful lot of jobs. Well, the Port Authority is a really difficult animal to work with. The Port Authority is a bureaucracy unto its own, but we need some political pressure. We now have a governor who believes in the environment. I think going forward, the Port Authority and cities like ours need to work together.
The plume, essentially the exhaust, travels throughout the neighborhood. And so we see here that suddenly now we're at 161,000 particles per cc, 8 times the amount of particulate matter in the air as trucks pass by. Diesel engines produce a whole array of different toxic substances. There's benzene, formaldehyde, other toxic volatile organic compounds, nitrogen oxides, and the whole mixture of diesel exhaust is a carcinogen. Yeah, so I raised my family here, my young children. We had an air filter in every room. So I had one in the bedroom, one in the living room, one in my kids' room, each of my kids' rooms.
Now it's about enforcement, and the only message I can give is to the truck companies, stay out of our neighborhood.
New Jersey is not a strict state at all. When it comes to enforcement for the EPA, other states, especially Maryland, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, these states are very strict on truckers. Truckers' nightmares are going through those states.
And as you can hear, it's not only the pollution itself, but the noise pollution.
No, this is an M&M truck.
So ever since that legislature, 2007 legislation on emissions and gas, you really don't see, you see basically the same trucks out there. I don't know if it's because the companies, they figure they save money by not purchasing new trucks and equipment, but it's basically the same old trucks.
What we've seen this morning and this afternoon, it seems like it's dramatically decreased, but they're still here.
We want to make a difference to get the numbers reduced from like 100 all the way down to like 18. That's a very big step, I think.
This is what we need to know so we know how to react and what our next step is.
Thank you, Walt. Did you want to make some more comments about what we just saw for folks, and then we'll introduce Rob for a couple minutes?
I'm gonna pass it over to Rob.
Okay. Rob, you're muted, unfortunately. You're muted.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Walter. And I just have a couple of slides, as Walter mentioned, that give a little bit more, some of the details about what we did in working with Walter and others at Groundwork Elizabeth, people who are featured in the film. Just a little bit more of an overview, I guess, about the situation there in Elizabeth. Let me just get to where I can share my screen. Okay, all right, so I just have a couple of slides here. Hope you can see this clearly. So as as Walter mentioned, it was first back in 2013 that the director of Brand New Day, that local social services and community development organization on First Street, contacted us, along with Kim Gaddy there from Clean Water Action and another local resident. And we did a couple of things. One was like a really low-tech truck count, just standing on the street and counting the trucks, especially these big 18-wheelers that were going by, tractor-trailer trucks. But then also what we were able to do with some more sophisticated instruments like shown in the video was measure these particles in the air, particulate matter air pollution, such as black carbon, which is a really pretty specific pollutant that comes from diesel engines, as well as PM 2.5, you may be familiar with, another regulated form of particulate matter. And we did this both on the street as well as on First Street, as well as on a side street, like only a couple 100 feet away, but as like a background measurement. And what we see here on this graph here is three different locations in blue, red, and then the background in green. And so you can see the background is sort of pretty steady, and that was like from the turnpike, which was maybe a half a mile away, but covers really the air pollution from that really covers the neighborhood. But in addition to that, on First Street there, we see just pretty much every time a truck would pass by, there'd be a blip, an increase, a sudden peak exposure to black carbon or particulate matter. So children, as Walter mentioned, go into school. There's like 3 different schools along this route, along this road, as well as the outdoor water park, and as well as a daycare center and a health facility, a health clinic. So people walking on the street there, we're trying to encourage people to walk and exercise and be active in terms of their transportation, are experiencing this, potentially every morning for the children. So it's an issue not just, as Walter said, about safety, but also on this very narrow road, but also the air quality, and more than 60 trucks per hour. So we did align ourselves then with other another councilman at the time who wasn't featured in the film, wrote a report about this. At the time, we didn't really realize either that Walter was working on this issue, but I think things certainly came together politically, as well as the evidence that we were able to gather. We wrote a report again that went to the town council, and then there was finally this waiver from the federal highway transportation folks, because it wasn't necessary for truckers to use this route to get from either this end of town, Elizabeth is here in the middle, pretty much, from either the exchange 13A on the turnpike to 13, or vice versa. At one point there was, Walter could probably tell me exactly how much, but there was a difference in the tolls, something on the order of a few bucks. So if you're anywhere in this area, you would choose the get on the turnpike at the point where you could save a few bucks, and that might mean like driving through town. And there was only one route, only one truck route, and that was First Street. And as Walter described, as you can see in the video, a very narrow street, and a residential street, as well as having the schools and the other facilities where there's vulnerable populations on the street. So the bottom line is that it took 4 years. I think Walter was working on it for longer than that, to finally have this truck ban put in place. And then we were able to go back and do our measurements again, do the truck count again, and that's pretty much what's featured in the film. But finding that there were still some stray trucks, like in this image here, again, whether they didn't know about the ban or whether they had other reasons why they had to go through the town. But as it continues to be an enforcement issue to some extent. But you can see here that now the single measurement on the street is like the background, again, like we saw the green line we saw on the previous slide. So I think it was, an example of an effort where, especially with the initiative of Walter and folks at the church, which is right there on First Street, and all that they did to, publicize the issue and contact the elected officials and the regulators who were involved, and sort of very similar to what Father Miguel, did by networking and contacting and, being, I think, an example or a role model for, how leadership in faith communities can, get things done. Sort of what's your motivation in the faith community? It's to do good and to improve public welfare and the common good. So I think that goes a long way, in how we can make change for the better around environmental health. So I guess I'll leave it there. And I'm not sure if we can have some time for questions later, if there are any questions about sort of what we did in terms of the technical aspects of it.
We are doing great on time. So I wanted to throw out a question. Please put any kind of questions you have in the chat, and we'll send them, or we'll give them to our presenters. And then I have a question for everyone. So my question for everyone is, what in your opinion are the top things faith-based institutions can do to impact the environmental and public health of their congregants and community? And it could be something that you think of or something that you've already done. I can tell you in my community in Asbury Park, St. Stephen's AME Church opened up their church for vaccines for people in our community. Also, I have done organizing in St. Stephen's in Ironbound. When Ironbound was experiencing all the kind of degradation, we would have community meetings, community organizing meetings in the church, oftentimes with the pastor, you know. Last but not least, I want to give one more example, and that is that the Unitarian Universalist UU Action, Unitarian Universalist, they have a strong organization that is an advocacy organization that works to advocate on many different issues, but including the cumulative impacts law, which really talks about health or the potential of preventing health impacts in EJ communities. So I wanted to share that with you and give you the opportunity to go ahead and answer that question. And in addition, I'm going to ask that of my panelists and my colleague. So the question is, what in your opinion are the top things that faith-based institutions can and do to impact the environmental and public health of their congregants and community? So Father Miguel, you've done a lot. Is there anything else you can think of or anything else you wanted to share?
Yes, I would like to maybe, bring a personal concern. Everybody's affected by pollution, contaminants in the environment. I'd like to share a personal experience that we're having at the place where we have an apartment in Astoria, in Queens, New York. The name of the complex is Acropolis Gardens. For a lot of years, there have been a lot of mismanagement, I will call it, poor, maintenance of the buildings, the infrastructure, pipes, roofs, and there have been leaks for a number of years. That have, they try to patch it, but still the water comes in. And the main concern here is mildew, right? It's a very dangerous situation. So, we have leaks, they sort of patch it, they say that they're going to fix it, but they never do it totally or completely. And recently, one of the main pipes to our complex bursted and delivered so much vapor, right? It's water that is in the form of gas, right? And it damaged the first floor, one apartment, and we are on the second floor as well. Even the floor was lifted up. And then mold all over the place. And as we continue to talk to the management, they keep giving us promises. Oh, we're going to take care of this. We're going to do that. And then they say, oh, contact your insurance company. It's like they try to put the expense on somebody else. They don't want to take responsibility. It's the infrastructure of the building. Legally, they're responsible for maintaining those buildings, and they're not doing so. So we are in the middle of this battle. And I'm saying to myself, this is happening to me. Imagine those people who have no voice, those who do not know how to work the system, right? So we as leaders, we need to hear people's concerns, right? It might be something that it sounds like a very simple situation, but if you look at the whole problem, it's a huge problem. If you just take one building, right, and then you take it to a community, sometimes these issues are not uncovered quickly, right? Because people do not know that there is mold in their apartments or their homes or their buildings. And then this could be deadly, right? That's we know that it could be deadly, right? Or can be very detrimental to the health of a person. So, it's a personal battle, but at the same time, it should be a community battle. we should be able to organize people around issues so that we can defend our rights, right? And also to protect our health, but because if we lose our health, that's all we have. And the health of a person is worth millions and millions of dollars. So you cannot put a price to it. And so I'm concerned about various topics and issues that have to do with the environment in our communities, and we as leaders, faith leaders, should be supporting people in those fights and struggles.
What I'm going to do, Father Miguel, is I'm going to introduce you to the Healthy Homes folks. And just so happens our next session is going to be on lead and healthy homes. And that session is going to happen on January 12th. I'll hook you up with those folks beforehand. But there's a lot of Stacy Berger's organization, Housing and Community Development Network, and ISLES do a lot of work. So do the folks in Newark. There's a coalition that Rob's with. So we'll hook you up with the Healthy Homes folks. And then we can also kind of explore how the churches are working with that kind of organizing. I see there's a couple things happening in the chat that I want to acknowledge. One is that one of my neighbors, Joe Grillo, is on, and he works with Sustainable Jersey, and he's basically letting us know that faith-based institutions are the bridge between environmental justice professionals and activists to connect with the wider community. So welcome, Joe. Thank you for being here. And Joe's also active. He does a project in the churches. It's an Asbury Park dinner table project. It's a great project. So thank you for being here, Joe. Also, Joanna Berger wants to ask our faith folks, or maybe the panel, what can the faith-based community do to make sure there are green spaces and nice places, nice green places for people to see nature? That's a question so I don't know, Walt, you want to answer that? Father Miguel, you want to answer that? Rob, you want to take a shot at that? But the question is, what can the faith-based community do to make sure that there are green spaces and nice green places for people to see nature?
That's one of the biggest concerns in crowded communities, right? Because there is no green space. So that might be a good idea to start thinking about how to develop maybe like a local algorithms in the small communities. Here at our church, we have a nice lawn. Maybe that might be an idea to plant more trees, that are not too tall, and maybe put some benches. So that our Church Holy Trinity is a landmark now, historical landmark in West Orange. So maybe make it more attractive and create a little algorithm. It's a good idea. Maybe I could start thinking about it and talk to people how to make the lawn more attractive. By the way, if you drive on Main Street, apparently it's the only green space that we have, along with a field from a local school. But very limited space where we are, but that's a good idea. Thank you.
Walt, are you able to answer that also? That was a great answer, Father Miguel. Walt, faith, there's a question here about what can the faith-based community to do to make sure there are green spaces and nice green places for people to see nature.
You're muted, Walt.
Well, you got to take your, there you go.
Oh, I didn't hear the question, but I heard I didn't hear it the first time, but I just heard what you asked me.
Okay.
What we do is we take the kids out in the church vans. We got a couple of vans, we fill them up, and right where we're at, it's all concrete. So having a green space on First Street, that's not going to happen. So we usually take the kids out to the park or to the beach or Watchung, different places where they do have the green space. We have all inner city kids. They're in the city most of the time, so they love it when we take them out to these parks. We go winter and summer. So that's
All
what
right.
we're doing.
Excellent. Joe Grillo is also making us aware that faith-based institutions can sponsor nature walks and excursions within community green spaces for community members. He's giving the example of Hawk Rise Nature Sanctuary in Linden, New Jersey. And I can tell you that there's a Catholic church on West Bangs Avenue, on Route 33 in West Bangs Avenue, that has a labyrinth in the back of their church. It's Holy Innocents in Neptune. It's a great place to be. Okay, so the Linden School District collaborates with churches to conduct guided tours for 7th graders. So maybe that's something we can hook Walt up with that idea, the Hawk Rise Nature Sanctuary. So
I just wanted to maybe follow up, if I could, and ask both Father Miguel and Walter about perhaps what some of the challenges are in getting, congregants, people in the church, engaged around environmental health issues. Like, to what extent, I guess depending on the circumstances, like when there's a lead crisis in Newark, then maybe people in West Orange are going to be concerned about it. But perhaps something, about green space and how it affects health, that might not be like high on people's priority, maybe not. But sort of how do you lead the congregation towards some issues that are important around environmental health?
Well, pandemic has made it harder for us. But what helped us get people more aware of what was going on.
hey, we're losing you a little bit, Walt. I don't know if you can, we're losing you a little bit. All right, why don't we go to you, Father Miguel, until Walt gets in a better situation?
When it comes to public health, I think the main concern is when people do not have the time or resources to be educated on some of the topics. And so resources, I think, is the biggest issues, because at least where we are in West Orange, it's a very, it's a working class group, right, that we have here in the community. And therefore their resources in terms of finances and educational resources they can access is very limited. So I think we can bring maybe more educational activities and awareness into the town. I think people are tuned to know and learn, because once we opened the space and spoke about public health, they were willing to listen. So that resistance is not the issue, right? It's the lack of opportunities to be educated. And therefore, every time that you're like Holy Trinity in West Orange has become like a community center, right? This is the places where people go to be informed about different things. And therefore, we connect to the people this way. In terms of COVID, our church decided not to continue services to avoid being contaminated, right? And so we created the awareness that people should wear masks, that they should not visit people, that they should get vaccinated. And we created plans so that they could make it easy for them to access those services. And so, in my view, resources are the main concern here.
Go to Walter. Walter,
Thank
we can hear Walter.
So, as I was trying to say, we were involved. What made our congregation more aware, not only our congregation, the whole community more aware, is when they had the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. We were involved in sending tractor trailer loads of water. We had a drive going out to Flint. We had a couple of guys
I'm so sorry, Walt. We lost you again. So it looks like we have. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make an announcement with everybody. It's almost 10. It's almost 10 after 11. We still want to continue the conversation, but I do want everybody to know that we will include the film in a link to our film about Countdown to Clean Air, also in addition to the session and in addition to the slides. So we'll have all of the slides up that we showed today, and we'll have a link to the film. So Rob, do you want to take it for a minute?
I guess we have a little bit more time. Maybe we'll end a little bit early today, but I just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Father Miguel said earlier about the mold issue and about how it's a pretty common issue and a problem, especially in housing that's maybe of poor quality, and how people who live in that housing that is vulnerable are also themselves like socially vulnerable. I mean, they can't necessarily have the resources to fix it or to move out on their own. So as you said, Father Miguel, like, maybe like a problem that people think, oh, it's an individual problem, but it's bigger than that. And I guess maybe you could comment on like sort of like how that's a role for the church, that that we're talking about not people dealing with their individual problems, but really what's the bigger problem that's the combination again of social vulnerability, people not having the means to necessarily help themselves in those circumstances, and how the church can be a voice for the collective action to try to find ways that we can remediate homes that have those kind of problems, and it's not the burden on the individual because they can't move or they're afraid to complain to their landlord to get evicted or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think one of the approaches that could be implemented is organizing, right? If you have one voice, you don't probably go too far. But if you got, families together, who are affected by this situation, then you have to implement pressure. I mean, we're not helpless. There are actions that people can take. I mean, they can stop paying the rent, right? Put it in a escrow account somewhere, get some legal help, put pressure on these institutions or companies, because by the way, they, receive millions of dollars in the money that they collect from the tenants and shareholders, right? So, I mean, they are supposed to be managing these buildings or complexes. And therefore, church leaders should listen to people's concern and not dismiss them like it's only their problem. It might be a systematic problem. And in this case of Acropolis that I spoke earlier, it is a systematic problem. I mean, I saw a document that it said that in the 1980s, they were admitting in a document that there were leaks on the roof. And, and then less than a year ago, about a year ago, we had some leaks in the roof that were coming through the pipe. The water was filtering down. I mean, and therefore, buildings in total decay, no maintenance. And, that's part of their responsibilities. I mean, they own these properties. They should take care of the buildings and don't pass the expenses to the tenants or the shareholder who have cooperatives in there. So I think organizing is the key here, and the faith leaders should listen carefully. You'll be surprised how many people come to our church here with so many problems, right? And we listen to them, we guide them up to a point, and then we start to make referrals. There are cases in which a referral will help, but there are other cases like this one that there is a continuous struggle that you have to do it like almost every day, and you cannot drop the ball. Unfortunately, in the building, the complex that we are, people are supposed to be part of the board, right? The tenants and the shareholders, but somehow they dropped the ball many years ago. And therefore, that a community action has to be taken again, has to be reorganized, and people should be involved. They're not alone. We're not alone, and that's one of the things that we have to do. We have to be also as a faith leader. We have to know that God demands of us, that, you know, that we love our neighbor, that we act humbly, but also to seek justice, right? And justice is when somebody commits an act that aggravates another person by different means, right? And in this case, it will be our own health, and they are affecting our own health. Therefore, they basically, making us ill, and that's not good. That's supposed to be solved.
Do you want to acknowledge that Mike Gotchfeld is asking a question about what is the future of new low emission trucks for the New Jersey port? Rob, could you take that?
Sure, yeah. That is a good question, in that, not only Walter has been struggling for, years to do things very locally there in Elizabeth, but also it's another systemic problem throughout the region, that there are various estimates, but probably more than like 11,000 truck trips a day to the port. And there's been efforts over time to replace older, dirtier trucks with newer, cleaner trucks, more than 90% cleaner in terms of the particulate matter. But although those efforts go back to engines dated 2007, there are still probably at this point about 40% or so, almost half the trucks that service the port at the last count that I saw a year or two ago were pre-2007 trucks. And so the port has recently got around to banning I think it was 1997 trucks. So there's still a lot of older, dirtier trucks on the road. There's another issue, around social issues as well, in that most of the trucks are owned by owner-operators who can't afford newer, cleaner trucks, the $250,000 newer truck. Or Walter can perhaps comment on that, how much newer truck costs. So there's been various attempts to provide incentives like low-cost loans, which have had some small amount of success, with several hundred trucks being replaced. But again, 11,000 truck trips a day. So it continues to be an issue over time, despite the fact that there will be slow turnover over time. And then there are other issues related to the maintenance of these the newer trucks, which have special diesel particle filters, which have to be maintained properly. There's been some reports of them being actually drilled through to avoid the issues with the maintenance. And how prevalent that is not really clear. But it's an ongoing issue, despite the fact that it's been something that people have been struggling with. The Coalition for Healthy Ports in New Jersey has been working on that issue for probably 12 years now, and again made some progress, and there's hope for the future, but it's taking time.
Okay, I just want to give it up to all of you guys to give us closing remarks. We'll start with Walt. If you wanted, Walt, are you driving? It looks like Walt may be driving, but you're muted, Walt. You're muted if you want to give closing remarks. Okay, we're not going to go to Walt. We're going to go to Father Miguel to give closing remarks.
Yes, thank you for the invitation, and we'll continue to work issues in terms of public health. I think one of the important remarks that I would like to make is that we need to educate ourselves. No matter what level of education that we have, it doesn't matter what level you have, you can always improve, you will always learn some new things. And we need to be involved with things that have to do with the environment. We depend on nature, right? We take things from nature, we consume them, we process them, and we have to be responsible for taking care of our resources. We have to replenish the trees if we cut them. right? So we have to take care of the soil. Try not to use fertilizers, for example, use other means to create crops. And as a faith leader, I'm committed to not just academics, but also about the well-being of human beings, right? And other living creatures, because we have to take care of our planet. Sometimes we think that somebody else is going to be taking care of the situation or the problems. But we as part of the community, we have to be involved. We are part of a web that we are all interconnected, right? We're not isolated. We're part of a huge system, right? And this ecosystem is important. Everything that we do matters. And things that we don't do also matter. So my invitation to everyone is get involved. Don't think that it's somebody else's problem, because in the end, it's all our problem. And I give you many thanks for this opportunity to share my findings. Thanks.
Thank you. Walt, do you have the opportunity to get off you're on, we're asking you for a closing remark. There you go. There you go. Closing remarks.
I'm going to have to pass because I'm driving now. I'm going to a residential area in Freehold. But it was nice being on, and thank you for the opportunity. Take care. I got to go.
You're muted, Naker.
Bob, you want to give a closing remark?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess first, one omission from my comments about the trucks was that the ultimate solution is electric trucks, and there are actually a few trucks now on the Port Authority property within the confines of the property where these trucks are now being doing the job. But it's going to take a while longer for electrification of the complete fleet, of course. So yeah, I wanted to thank our presenters, Father Miguel and Walter, and really say that I'm looking forward to working more with you in the future. And that's, I think you provide a lot of insights, especially into what's going on the ground, really, in your communities. And we're definitely looking forward to working with you more in the future. It's great to see, I think, the progress that you've made and the work that you've done, and really appreciate your sharing that with us today.
Thank you very much. Please join us, everyone, next time on Wednesday, January 12th. We want to give a special, thank you to Father Miguel, whose idea this was, and Walt, who joined us also to participate in this session. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with us. And on January 12th, it's the Healthy Homes led session, facilitated mostly by Elise Pivnik from Isles. So please join us then at 10 o'clock. But everybody now have a healthy and happy holiday. And, please fill out your evaluation. Thank you very much. Take care now.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thank you.